Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to City Hall. You obviously know why you're here to discuss the tragic incident that took place yesterday. I think yesterday we had a lot of unanswered questions. Today we still have some unanswered questions, but the commissioner thought it was important that we all get together to kind of give you guys an update on what we know so far, and then what I guess try to give you some reasonable expectations to when we'll know all the answers. There's still a lot of frustration here, especially with our our federal partners and our state partners in terms of laws and funding and actions that they ought to be taking to help urban centers like Yonkers. And that's a discussion we could have another day. But for now, let's kind of give you guys an update on what we have, and I'll turn over to our police commissioner, John Moe.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. And as the mayor said, for the purposes of transparency, we feel like it's best for us to get out as much information to the public about what actually happened. We're going to share with you a video of the entire incident that occurred yesterday. We'll probably play it more than once just so you can get a real handle. It's not a perfect video in terms of being able to stop it in slow motion, things like that. So we think probably the best way is to just play it and then replay it. And as members of the press have questions, we'll be more than happy to answer as many as you have for us. Just to start off, for those that weren't here yesterday, we had an officer-involved shooting at 115 Elm Street at the intersection of Elm and Linden, where our officers were members of the Safe Streets Task Force, which is a federal, local, and state task force that deals with violent crime primarily, and a lot of that the territory goes with gun interdiction. And so they were looking at targets at 115 Elm. Just to clarify, because I know there was rumors about this earlier, that this was like an undercover gun buy. It was not. It's a much more common way where we get information that there are illegal guns or someone's possessing an illegal gun, and then our folks will take action. Now, also I'd like to mention that we're not going to mention names of other people in the bodega at the time, and the reason for that is 2 are being charged federally, and the FBI and the Department of Justice has asked us not to release the names until those folks are presented to a U.S. magistrate, which we anticipate will happen later today, so you get the names at some point today, but we're not going to be releasing them right now. The other folks in the video, no one else was arrested, so we're not going to release their names either. But I will say that, this is, and we had this conversation earlier, this is a recurring problem on Elm Street that we're working to solve. And a year to the day, 1 year ago, we had a 6-year-old that was shot just 1 block over. So what you're seeing here is the officers, just to paint a picture, it's our effort and our officers' efforts and our federal and state and local partners' efforts to interdict gun violence and to try to get as many guns as we can off the street so a 6-year-old doesn't get shot, innocent people don't get shot. And that's what happens in a situation like this. So as you know, they had this incident yesterday, we described it, so now I'll play the video and then we'll go slow and you can ask as many questions as you like. Do you want to go ahead? I'll try to walk you through it as best I can. So, stop there. This is the bodega at 115 Elm, the interior. So, what you're seeing from this camera vantage point, you're seeing what's going on inside as our officers of our Safe Streets Task Force are converging on the bodega. And most of the folks that were outside in front of the bodega, and if you understand Oak and Elm and Linden, they're there quite a bit, and then they go into the bodega. So just to paint the picture, this is right before the officers get out of their vehicles and converge on the corner. Stop right there, Dean. So this is the shooter, which is 28-year-old Bryant Jackson. We can release his name. He is deceased. And I want you to focus on the chain, because the chain is connected to the gun there, which was gun number 1. So he had the chain attached to his belt loop, and the gun is in his pocket where you see his hand. So does everybody see that? Okay, continue, Dean. Okay, at this point, it appears from what you can see, he's showing the individual in the black hood the gun, and then he calls over the individual in the gray hood the gun to show it to them. And at this point, they don't know that the officers are coming. He puts it, you can see him put it back in his sweatshirt, and you can see how the pocket hangs a little bit low. He's putting it back in the sweatshirt. The pocket hangs low, so it's heavy. And then this is where they see that the officers are coming in. He goes out and you can see him look through the window knowing that the officers are coming. So up to this point, the officers come in. It's important to note that none of the officers had their guns drawn at this point. The first detective comes in, and the second detective. Now, the second detective is our officer who was shot. That's 27-year veteran Detective Brian Menton, a member of the Safe Streets Task Force, unbelievable, tremendous detective. And yes, he's retiring in a week. But it's important to note that he didn't stop doing his job until the very end, doing what he did. So he comes in. Go ahead, Dean. Now, Mr. Jackson attempts to walks out, and you can see that Brian tries to keep him, Detective Menton tries to keep him in the store by putting his hand in. Go ahead, Dean. At this point, he pulls back, and you can see him grab the gun from inside of his shirt, and he's already shot Menton. Detective Menton, this is where Detective Menton falls down. Go ahead, Dean. And now, what we did was, what we think is the gun, after the gun discharged, it stovepiped because it got caught on the cloth of the inside of the sweatshirt. Now, that's speculation, but that's what we think happened. And thank God it did jam, because you have, after Detective Menton was on the ground, you have the other detective, and we're not going to disclose any other officers' names or detectives' names or agents' names. He wasn't, he didn't have his gun out, and thankfully the gun didn't go again. But at this point, the Detective Menton is shot. He's on the floor, and this is where you can see the FBI agent come in with his weapon drawn in response to this shot.
So that's the end of the video. I'll play it once more.
Sure.
Non-stop.
Yeah, we'll go through it now. Be quiet.
And Commissioner, it's gun number 1?
It is gun number 1. You can see it because it's attached to that chain that was attached to the belt loop. One more time, if you want. It's quick. So that's where we're at. We're happy to answer any questions.
How's the detective doing, Commissioner?
Okay, so the detective is Detective Brian Menton, as I said, a 27-year veteran of the Yonkers Police Department, very decorated. It's important to note that some of you folks may recall there was a shooting in Getty Square 2 Septembers ago, where a male opened fire in the middle of the square, busy time. The camera video will show, a woman with a baby carriage and a young man with a bicycle. Detective Menton was one of the people that disarmed him without firing a shot. So this is an officer and a detective who just does this. He's been doing it his entire career. At this point, he is still critical, but in stable condition. As I said yesterday, the injuries are substantial, substantial internal injuries. He had a lot of blood loss, but he's in the best place he could be, in a local trauma center, and his family's there. We're providing as much support as we can, and the hospital staff have been fantastic, and we've had an outpouring of care from other agencies, people all over the place, so we're very grateful. So we're very hopeful he's going to make a full recovery, but we would ask everybody to pray for him.
His age?
47 years old.
Okay. Could you also clarify for me, I think I know the answer, but he fires once, and then you think he attempts to fire again, but the gun jammed in the cloth, and then an FBI agent follows.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain why the FBI agent fired? Did he think?
Well, I mean, as you can see on the video, it was clear that, he shot Detective Menton. Detective Menton went down, and then in order to stop the suspect from shooting the other officers, he took one shot, and that's when the suspect was shot.
Where was the suspect shot? What part of his body?
I believe he shot in the head area. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Keith Olson posted on social media that Brian Menton was the best cop he ever worked with. Is that indicative of the regard the department? I understand he has quite a reputation.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely incredible detective, and I know that this is cliche because a lot of times they say that, but he was the real deal. He was responsible. If you know the history of Yonkers and how we've been plagued by shootings and gang violence, the work he did and the work that the other folks do, think about the fact that we had 21 shootings in all of 2021. People need to understand that. That doesn't happen without all kinds of different proactive efforts to try to bring gun violence under control. As we always say, we're very protective of our community. They deserve better, and we have to be out there. And Brian is a huge part of that. Similarly sized cities in 2021, 350 shootings, and we have 21. So far this year, we have had 3. And it doesn't, again, like I said, it doesn't happen by accident, and it's a testament to the work that Detective Menton has done.
Sometimes it seems like a relatively small number of people are responsible for an outsized number of crimes, and I'm wondering if that's the case here at all. The 2 people that are facing federal charges, have they ever faced local charges related to?
We're not at this point going to discuss anything about the 2 that are arrested federally. That information, Tony, will be released shortly by the U.S. Department of Justice. I can tell you that the other individuals in the store, 3 of whom have open gun charges and we don't know if they're out on bail or they're just released pending ROR, but 3 have open gun charges. We're not going to release their names either because they weren't arrested, but I think it's important to connect the dots there that, this is why our officers are conducting these type of operations at that particular location, because it's gun violence prone. And, it's always this constant effort to try to provide our folks who live at Elm and Linden better.
And finally, I'm sorry, why did you think it was important to release this video? Is there kind of word on the street that you're trying to show is not supported by the video, or what was your thought process?
I think that it's an iteration that I think police departments across the country have realized that the days of saying no comment doesn't work, and it's not the right thing to do. You have to be professional. You have to address things, good or bad, and you have to share what you have. And I think, we have the best community in the world in Yonkers, and it's important for us to share this with them so there is no lingering doubt about what happened. This is the best way to counter, maybe false narratives about what happened. We're showing you what happened, and it's important for us to be upfront and transparent with our community. And this has been a directive by Mayor Spano from day one.
Did Jackson come up here from Metro Atlanta to sell these illegal guns?
We don't know that for sure. And again, I think that, the criminal histories may be released at a later date, but clearly, he was in a absolute hot spot, the hottest of hot spots as far as gun violence, so that's a plausible possibility.
And, sorry, Detective Menton, was he supposed to have a retirement party tonight?
No, he wasn't. He's expected to retire a week from now. But again, it's a testament to, and President Olson is correct, he's the best cop I've ever seen as far as the work he's done in trying to lower gun violence. I mean, it's just phenomenal work.
Just to follow up on the suspect who is deceased, and who his mother said that he was from Georgia,
Mhm.
visiting people up here. Do you know him to be local, or was he indeed from out of state?
We don't know that at this point. We do know that in addition to these two guns, obviously after the scene settled down, we always want to do things right, and we always want to do things lawfully and make sure that our cases are as airtight as possible. So we conducted a search warrant later in the day, and we got 2 more illegal guns. So out of this location, 150 Elm Street, we got 4 illegal guns. And this is the work, again, to emphasize over and over again, this is the work that's done to make sure that none of those guns, maybe next week, next month, 2 days from now, were involved in a shooting. We don't want to see 6-year-olds shot. We don't want to see anyone in Elm and Oak shot. They, like I say all the time, they deserve better.
No, Commissioner, I hear that this particular officer that was shot, been involved in many guns arrests and gun recoveries. Can you tell us how many?
I,
Have a number?
I tried, Ben, to get that number, so the question was, how many gun arrests did this officer was involved in? And if you put it in the context of was involved in, I'm sure it was hundreds, hundreds of them. I don't have a specific number, but absolutely, this is the work that he did.
Commissioner, do you know what the reason was for the initial stop of Mr. Jackson?
Well, they had been investigating the group collectively during the day. So they obviously had information that there may have been gun involved, and they were correct. And that's what led to that.
And can you explain a little bit about, I believe there's a story about Mr. Menton's brother-in-law who may have driven him to the hospital. If you can share about what happened there?
We're not going to discuss any other people involved other than Detective Menton at this point, and Detective Menton, our officer who was shot, and the deceased. Those 2 names. After that, we're not going to discuss any other names for now.
Can you speculate on somebody sort of asked you what this guy's role was in the gun sales, but when he was showing the gun, was that an attempt to maybe conduct a sale, or was he
That is absolutely a plausible possibility. I can't say for sure because I don't know what he was thinking. And I'm sure that there's going to be many more interviews with the people that were involved with this to determine that. But remember, we're only just nigh past 24 hours since this happened, so we're still at a very early stage in the investigation. It's just very important, as at the mayor's directive, to make sure we get this information out to the public as quickly as possible. But we don't have all the answers right now.
Is that something they do with the chain attached to the clothing, so they don't drop it, or?
Not necessarily, but in this case, it's possible. Again, I don't really know what the thought process went into with respect to why he had the chain on there.
No, Commissioner, that's a hot spot, as you said.
It is.
And 2:15 p.m., it's a time of the day that there is a lot of kids running around, and there is a gun arrest that is about to be made. Did officers took into consideration that shots might be fired, and there is tons of people walking around the corner?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think the issue is that they do this every day, and they have to do it, before they lose the targets or lose the opportunity of getting the guns. Obviously, all these things come into consideration. There's always a supervisor there with them, whether he be a federal supervisory agent or otherwise. So I'm sure that was taken into consideration. But these situations, Ben, are so variable, and they can change in a moment's notice that there's not a lot of time. When you have an opportunity to arrest people for illegal guns, that it's just exactly when you want it to be. Yes, Tony?
What can you tell us about gun number 1? It's a semi-automatic handgun. There's something hanging off of the barrel down below in front of the trigger. Is that a laser sight or something? What is it?
It's either a flashlight or a laser attachment. The second gun, just for the reference, is what we refer to now, and you're hearing a lot in the media, is a ghost gun. So these are the guns that are untraceable. They essentially, it's relatively inexpensive to get a machine that'll take this, heavy composite plastics and make it into a gun, but there's no serial number. So this is something that we've been seeing more of. People all over the country, police departments all over the country have been seeing, and it's a real problem that we need to have addressed because it's untraceable right now.
I know it's only 24 hours later. Have you been able to do any tracing of that gun up top? Follow up on Chris's question, was it part of an iron pipeline coming up from the south?
We haven't got through that yet, Tony. That'll certainly be part of it, because if we can develop a historical case as to where the gun came from and who had possession of it, that's always going to be something that we're going to be very, very interested in.
So y'all will be reaching out to authorities in Georgia then?
We probably will as part of the investigation. I wouldn't rule that out at all.
gun 2, the ghost gun, another one of the 2 suspects who's been arrested had that on their possession?
Correct.
And then you said there were 2 others recovered in warrants. Was that found, it was in 115 Elm, so where were the 3 and 4 located?
In the back of the store.
After they did the search warrant, so the question was, where were the other 2 guns located? So you have the initial scene, we secure the scene, we back out, and then you go to a judge for a search warrant to get it done right. The search warrant gets signed, they go back in, and they found those 2 guns in the back of the store. So here we're talking about 4 stores in one location.
Connected to the store owner or connected to
No,
suspects?
we don't, we're still developing that information, but the good news is we got 2 more guns off the street. So 115 Elm, 4 guns. It's possible. I mean, clearly, when you look at the video, I can surmise when I look at it, they're very comfortable there. And, that's probably a location where they've been hanging out. Yes, sir.
Now that they mentioned that, in going through different bodegas throughout the city of Yonkers, you oftentimes see people hanging out in the stores like that. Is that something maybe you want to speak to business owners, bodega owners? You got to keep it clear, because they're, stashing things and potato chip racks and stuff,
It's a great question, Freddie. The question was, do we want to talk to bodega owners about, people congregating there all day? And I say it's a difficult thing for the bodega owners because the police can't be there 24/7. And, there is probably a level of intimidation. You look at what these folks were capable of doing. They shot a detective. So I think there's probably some hesitancy on the part of the bodega owners to do that. I'm sure they don't want folks like this there. I'm sure they don't want gun trafficking or drugs or stolen property or all the other things, the litany of things that happen in these places, but they're limited in what they can do.
We have time for one final question. If there's any.
Will make the video available, is it online or what?
We are going to make the video available. Yes.
The Westchester DA is awaiting determination from the state AG's office just about his prosecutorial role in all of this. What is just kind of your response to the next steps, obviously, with police and FBI involved in this sort of thing?
As far as the shooting or the investigation in and of itself?
I guess my understanding is I don't know if they're looking in the prosecution. I'm trying to clarify. Are they looking at the prosecution of the suspects? Are they looking into the department, the federal agent?
Okay. The investigation is going federal. So we are not, at this point, haven't charged anybody with anything. The Department of Justice and the FBI are making the charges. Those charges will be available, the names will be available, and the information on those 2 individuals that were arrested probably later today, as I said, after they're presented to a U.S. magistrate judge. That's going to happen today, so you'll hear about it sometime today.
How do you characterize the action of the FBI agent?
Heroic. A split-second moment. And believe me, nobody wants to be involved in these situations. He's going to have to carry this with the rest. He's a hero, but it's not an easy thing. And they do this every day, all day long. And you're only hearing about this today because of the sequence of events, but this is happening every day. They're getting guns off the street. And this is what we're up against. And, we have to always think about that too. It's important to note, and I said it yesterday, but I want to say it again. We love our Nodine Hill community, and they deserve better. And we're going to keep on going out there and working hard to give them everything everybody else has in Yonkers and Westchester County as far as a safe and secure environment. And we're going to do it. We're not backing down. We're going to keep on going because they deserve better.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.